Chapter 496, Final Chapter 3. The golden heavenly king, who had lost all 4 limbs and both eyes, let out a groan of pain. Even during the war 100 years ago he had never been injured to this extent. The humiliation and pain were unbearable. Damn it! He had tried to escape from him when his creation Mok-Gon drew his attention. He thought it was certainly possible since his attention was divided, but in that fleeting moment, not only did he gouge out both of his eyes, but he also stabbed his sword at the location of his core. Cough cough. Perhaps it was to deal with him quickly to prevent future troubles. However, there was one thing that he didn't know. Because of the damage to his core 100 years ago, he had moved its location slightly lower than the center of his chest just in case. Thanks to this, although the upper part of his core was blown away, it avoided complete destruction. However, twitch. The damage to his core, which was already not fully recovered, made recovery even slower. If it weren't for that, he would have quickly restored his arms, legs and eyes, but now it was overwhelming just to recover his internal injuries caused by his blade energy. It was utterly miserable. It would have been somewhat better if it had been the result of contending with the Demon King, but this was humiliation itself. To end up in this state because of him who had become human, not even of the demon clan. But now was not the time to dwell on humiliation. He needed to recover enough to move his body somehow and return to the heavenly realm with his divine artifacts. Twitch. But no matter how much he tried to calm down rationally, it was painful. It felt like this resentment wouldn't subside unless he killed him and avenged this humiliation. It was while he was consumed by such anger. Creep. Flinch. He felt something approaching. Normally he would have noticed immediately, but having lost both eyes and with his core further damaged, he only realized something was approaching when it was very close. Whoosh. That something enveloped him. It was something sticky. What is this? Kuhahihi. Even a creator is no different. When that arrogant pride crumbles, even if it's due to anger, greed overflows. From the transmitted will, the golden heavenly king could recognize what had enveloped him. It was the being called the third eye that he had created. It was Mok-Gon. How dare an insignificant thing like you? To think you've become so weak that you can't even prevent an insignificant thing from burrowing in. Truly pitiful. Stop it. No. How could I? I've been waiting for this moment. An absolute being surpassing even the 6 demon great strength king has crumbled. How could I miss this chance? You bastard. Even with severed limbs and damage to his core, he was still a being almost equal to a demigod. There was strong resistance as he tried to burrow in to control his body. It seemed the difference in will was too great. However, you're no longer an absolute being. Just a has-been king of the heavenly clan who could be defeated by a mere human. Aarg. It was a simple provocation, but it was effective. The crack in his boundless pride was enough to create an opening due to that humiliation. Crack. As the golden heavenly king's forehead split open in agony, blood vessels grotesquely protruded from that area, weaving into a round shape. It was becoming an eye. Whoosh. The body of the 6 demon lion-grasping king turned to ash and scattered. Jin Yurin's pupils, who had planted her sword in him, had returned to normal. Along with this, she saw the almost completely burned secret of the heavenly concealed divine path swordsmanship before her eyes. With her mind returned, she looked at the secret with reddened eyes and spoke. Ancestor. The form of Jin Wunwei was faintly visible in the secret. Seeing his brightly smiling figure, Jin Yurin shed deep tears. There was a time when she had resented her ancestor, but now she was grateful that he had helped her in the world until the very end, even breaking some of the natural order. Whoosh. As the secret of the heavenly concealed divine path swordsmanship was about to burn completely, Jin Wunwei's form gradually became fainter. Jin Yurin knelt before him and bowed. Jin Yurin, the last bloodline descendant of the Jin clan, sincerely thanks. Swoosh. Don't do that. I'm an incompetent ancestor who couldn't protect many things for you. So please from now on live your own life. With those words, Jin Wunwei gave a light bow to Sima Chuck of the Moon Evil Sword, who was standing behind Jin Yurin. Sima Chuck also nodded slightly, bidding him farewell. Although he didn't know much about immortal techniques, he realized that once that secret was completely burned, they would never meet again. Then Jin Wunwei looked somewhere with concern. I'm worried. What? He finally gained a human heart, but losing a precious bond, I'm concerned and don't know where that sadness and anger will be directed. In the direction Jin Woonwhai was looking, Mok Jae-eun was in the distance. Although he was watching the world through the secret, he was observing everything around, so he was concerned. Then, recalling Mok Jae-eun's strength, Jin Woonwhai shook his head. Although their meeting was brief, he believed that man would surely overcome even this sorrow. It's regrettable that fate can sometimes be tragic. To bring loss to a hero of the age. Whoosh. As the secret was about to burn completely, Jin Woonwhai bid farewell. Then farewell. But, flinch. The disappearing Jin Woonwhai looked somewhere and hurriedly said something. Quickly dodge. Whoosh. However, as the secret completely burned away, Jin Woonwhai's form disappeared completely. No sooner had this happened. Boom. With a thunderous sound that could rupture eardrums, a huge pillar of light shot up from the ground. The pillar of light had a dark red glow as if contaminated, and as it surged up, the ground shook and the earth shattered. Rumble, rumble, rumble. How can this be? He's not dead yet? Everyone looked at the contaminated dark red pillar of light with dumbfounded eyes, and in the center, they saw the golden heavenly king rising with horrifyingly grotesque wings flapping. This resurrected being was giving everyone a feeling of despair as if the sky was collapsing. Young Master Mok? Pai Lord? Heavenly demon? Everyone's gaze turned to Mok Jae-eun. The only one who could stop this despair-inducing being was Mok Jae-eun alone. But he was consumed by sorrow and suffering. However, no one could urge him to step forward. That's how much his sorrow, shedding tears while beating his chest, was conveyed to everyone. Then the voice of the golden heavenly king resounded. Rise, our only worthy opponent. Let us have our final battle to determine the fate of the world. The end. At those words, Mok Jae-eun murmured softly. My story has already ended in tragedy, losing my precious lover. And at that end even regret remained. The fate of the world or anything else no longer mattered to him. What meaning is there if she's not in this world, even if it's destroyed? Russell. At that moment, the only remaining fragment of ash gently touched Mok Jae-eun's cheek. At this, Mok Jae-eun's closed eyes opened. For the intangible fragment of her spirit body to touch his cheek. Mok Jae-eun looked at Wai So-yun, who resembled Chong Ryong so closely with his still reddened eyes. Become a grand master who embraces all. Chong Ryong's wish. He thought nothing remained, but her wish was still there. Swoosh. Mok Jae-eun slowly rose from his seat. And he turned his head to look at the golden heavenly king, no, the deformed being that had become one with Mok Gon, who was spreading tremendous energy in all directions as if an absolute god transcending good and evil had been born. Strangely, the two beings stained with madness had become even stronger by becoming one. However, Shing. Drawing the evil sword, evil commandment sword, Mok Jae-eun calmly extended the blade with a smooth sword intent. Woong 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 woong. Then his blade was stained black with demonic energy. Seeing this, the corners of the golden heavenly king's mouth, who had become one with Mok Gon, rose as if about to tear. The process was never important to begin with. The one standing at the end is the true victor. At that moment, Mok Jae-eun took a stance as if about to slash him with his sword. Go. Shudder. At that instant, the face of the golden heavenly king who had become one with Mok Gon turned pale. By becoming one, they could temporarily draw out all their divine power as the core recovered. But the capability emanating from Mok Jae-eun now was surpassing even that. It was truly supreme capability. Yo! Instinctively, the two united beings realized. This was already a being that had almost transcended the natural order. No matter how much they combined their strength, it wasn't something they could contend with. At this, the golden heavenly king who had become one with Mok Gon hurriedly tried to open a gate to the heavenly realm, but at that very moment. Whoosh! In an instant, Mok Jae-eun reached in front of him. Why I cut everything that exists. This is the ultimate sword I can wield. Slash. A single black line was drawn from the sky to the ground. Along with it, space was cut, and a red line appeared from the top of the head of the golden heavenly king who had become one with Mok Gon, straight down along with the pillar of light. Everyone watching was astounded by this tremendous sword that cut heaven and earth. Has there ever been a more perfect and ideal sword throughout history? Crack. As space was cut and distorted, the golden heavenly king who had become one with Mok Gon, about to be split in half, used his last strength to speak. A sword that cuts everything that exists? The peerless heavenly demon sword. Whoosh. As those words ended, the body of the golden heavenly king, which was being split in half, twisted into the cut space and was sucked in, then disappeared along with blood-red dust. Swish, swish, swish. As if nothing had happened, the space that had been split from the sky to the ground reconnected, and the world became clean again. Wah wah. All who had been watching anxiously cheered with joy at this sight. Finally, everything had ended. Despite these joyful cheers, Mok Jaeongun's eyes were tinged with emptiness and sorrow. Although he had saved the world from crisis and ended all resentment, nothing remained. Except for fulfilling her wish. Mok Jaeongun's eyes suddenly noticed Wai So-yun on the ground regaining consciousness. Her complexion was brighter than before. Although her body had been incomplete without the spirit, now that the soul had become one, it was no different from a complete rebirth. Ah! Seeing her who resembled Chong Ryong so closely, he becomes sorrowful again. Now they'll never meet again. Mok Jaeongun, who had been staring at her, then descended to the ground and approached her. Wai So-yun, who had regained consciousness, spoke with confusion. Young Master Mok? Mok Jaeongun approached her with a sad smile and embraced her. Thud. And gently stroking her head, he said, I've learned what the most painful things are since becoming human. Although she was bewildered, Mok Jaeongun continued. It's the loss of losing someone precious and the regret of not being able to fulfill what that precious person wanted. Young master. You may no longer remember, hear or speak in there, but I want to tell you this one last thing. I love you. Grip. Mok Jaeongun bit his lip tightly, closed his eyes and embraced Wai So-yun tightly. Her pupils and lips trembled at Mok Jaeongun's voice and body heat, full of intense emotion. She didn't know why, but the moment she heard Mok Jaeongun say, I love you, her heart trembled and her chest ached so much. But at that very moment, swish, a soft light flowed from Mok Jaeongun's body and seeped into Wai So-yun. A voice echoing in her ears. The beautiful and shining story of So-woo and me ended then. Now, it's the story of Chong Ryong and you. Along with this, numerous vivid memories flooded her mind. Yes. We'll be together. Even if it's just for a fleeting moment. She was beautiful. So beautiful, like a single red peony. I'm sorry, but I can't let you go. Chong Ryong is already my life. It was all me. Drip. Wai So-yun's eyes reddened and tears flowed down her cheeks. As Mok Jaeongun tried to detach himself from her after conveying his final words. Mortal. Mok Jaeongun's pupils wavered at that voice from Wai So-yun's mouth. Mok Jaeongun's eyes quickly reddened at her face, smiling through tears as if she had missed him so much. When something that can never be achieved is realized through earnest desire, we call that a miracle. The two embraced each other without hesitation and then kissed. Chapter 497, Final Chapter 4. 1 month after the Great War at the 10,000 Great Mountains that determined the fate of the Central Plains martial world. Late at night in the former Heaven and Earth Society's Grand Meeting Hall. 2 days before the inauguration ceremony, they were entering the final vote on an urgent proposal that had been raised. The proposal started with something quite trivial. However, it was unexpectedly decided unanimously. The first elder Oh Cheon-mu, sect leader of the Spiritual Sword Sanctuary, sitting in the highest seat, announced that the proposal had passed. Bang bang. Then, as all votes are in unanimous agreement, we shall proceed as proposed. Oh ho ho. Indeed. The seventh elder Hwan Yasian, acting as the meeting's secretary, closed the finalized minutes. Thus the executives rose from their seats. At that moment, someone sitting opposite approached the seventh elder Hwan Yasian. It was the fourth elder Ho Tae-gang, sect leader of the Wave Destruction clan. In all my years, I never thought we'd have a meeting, let alone a vote on such a proposal. I suppose it shows how sincere everyone is about this new organization. If it's a name that will remain for hundreds, thousands of years to come, it's only fitting. Well, that's true. But it seems you've had a change of heart too. A change of heart? Yes. Even though we decided to unify all martial houses and clans as branch clans, you didn't need to change, but seeing that you changed your shadow clan to the Flying Ghost clan, named after your unique martial art. At these words, Hwan Yasian made a subtle expression before answering. Although we were called Shadow, because we were in charge of spies and information, shouldn't we now move forward as a martial house in this new organization? Moving forward as a martial house. Is that ambition? Not bad. Much had changed in a short time. Although it took the form of a religious organization, this new group pursued true martial arts without being bound by orthodox or unorthodox paths. It had become the organization he truly desired. All of this was thanks to their lord, the heavenly demon cult leader. But even though the vote was predetermined, why didn't our lord attend the meeting hall? There's an unofficial martial arts competition. An unofficial martial arts competition? The fourth elder Ho Taegang tilted his head in confusion. In a sparsely populated plain not far from the 10,000 Great Mountains. The entire area was devastated, and in the center of a huge crater lay a stunningly beautiful woman with blonde hair and 9 tails, sprawled out and breathing heavily as if exhausted. She was the 100-faced King Golden Nine-Tailed Fox, one of the 6 demons. The Golden Nine-Tailed Fox, breathing heavily, screamed as if frustrated. Barg! Why has that damned human become so strong? Just a few months ago he was merely a novice, but now he had become a monster that she couldn't handle even at full strength. Someone approached her and looked down, saying, "That's the 4th time already. Give it a rest." That someone was Mokjayon, no, the heavenly demon. He now fully called himself the heavenly demon, having abandoned the name Mokjayon. The Golden Nine-Tailed Fox, unable to get up, shouted, "Who says I'm doing this for anyone's sake?" The heavenly demon shook his head at her stubborn attitude. Not long after the Great War ended, she had come to him, insisting they were connected by fate and should spend their lives together. Of course, the heavenly demon firmly refused. Angered, she said that if she lost to him in a fight, she would follow his will, and that's how it had come to this. Just give up. I've repaid the debt enough by entertaining you this much. No. It's far from enough. I won't give up until I have you, so be prepared. Be prepared. At her outcry, the heavenly demon chuckled and shrugged, then disappeared. Looking at the faint afterimage of the heavenly demon, she grumbled. Jerk heavenly demon. Wicked heavenly demon. Bad heavenly demon. But still she wanted him. The more she saw him, the more she yearned for him. As noon approached, the sun moved towards the center of the sky, its rays warmly illuminating the earth. As the inner city of the former Heaven and Earth Society opened, the square in front of the main building was so crowded with people that there was no room to step. With people from the outer and inner cities as well as invited guests from external groups like the diviner groups including the Harmonious Immortal Pavilion, some from the U-Clan, the Evil Alliance and others, tens of thousands had gathered in the square. What's with all these fires? There's fire everywhere? Whoosh. Although it was noon, braziers were placed throughout the square. Because of this, it was hot enough to be stifling. Not only were there braziers everywhere, but there was a noticeably large brazier on what looked like an altar platform. The words "Holy Fire Stand" were engraved on the brazier. Is it not time yet? When does the founding ceremony start? Everyone looked at the entrance of the main building, waiting for the founding ceremony to begin. Then, boom, boom, boom. The sound of drums being beaten spread from the top of the inner city walls. It's starting. Oh. Look over there. Warriors came out from the entrance of the main building in the inner city and spread out a long red silk cloth. Soon the executives who would hold key positions in the founding ceremony slowly walked out in 2 lines on either side. First Elder of the Spiritual Sword Sanctuary, O Cheomu, Profound Realm. Second Elder of the Poison Demon Clan, Bek Sahaki, Transformation Realm. Third Elder of the Sword Clan, Sword Demon Juice, Transformation Realm. Fourth Elder of the Wave Destruction Clan, Ho Taegang, Transformation Realm. Fifth Elder of the Spirit Spear Clan, Yu Jongsan, Transformation Realm. Sixth Elder of the Crimson Flame Clan, Lee Jeom, Transformation Realm. Seventh Elder of the Flying Ghost Clan, Huan Yixian, Pinnacle Stage of Peak Realm. Eighth Elder of the Bright Blade Clan, Sun Yun, Pinnacle Stage of Peak Realm. Ninth Elder of the Dream Illusion Sword Clan, Mong Muyak, Pinnacle Stage of Peak Realm. 10th Elder of the Light Martial Path Clan, Sip Chun, Pinnacle Stage of Peak Realm. 11th Elder of the Demonic Fist Clan, Go Yunbek, Pinnacle Stage of Peak Realm. 12th Elder of the Dark Demonic Clan, Hang Yuryang, Pinnacle Stage of Peak Realm. It's the Elders. Wah! A new official system had been announced 2 weeks before the founding ceremony, and this system was decided to strictly verify martial prowess to grant qualifications. The elders coming out now were the martial artists with the strongest martial might in the sect. It was also the strongest force in history, incomparable to the former Heaven and Earth Society. The sect leaders of each branch sect who would lead the new organization, the 12 elders, walked out and took their places on either side of the red silk path, joining their hands and assuming a reverent posture. The atmosphere was incredibly solemn, perhaps because they were all dressed in ceremonial robes. Then, boom, 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 boo-boo. After 5 drum beats and a long horn blast, someone finally appeared at the entrance of the main building. A figure walking out majestically, wearing a black and red patterned dragon robe embroidered with golden dragons. He was the one demon, Heavenly Demon, the world's #1 person and the current pinnacle of the martial world, who would be inaugurated as the first cult leader, founder, at this founding ceremony. Regardless of his appearance, everyone couldn't help but bow their heads at his overwhelming dignity and atmosphere that dominated the crowd. Thud thud. Following behind him, Great Dharma Guardian of the harmonizing demon poison sect, Gyeong So, Transformation Realm. Right Dharma Guardian of the Wind God Glan, Ma Are Hyen, Transformation Realm. Left Dharma Guardian of the Subduing Demon Clan, Jajiam Jong, Supreme Great Ability. Head of the cult leader's personal guard unit, Jang Nung AK, Guard Go Chan, Spirit Servant. Walked forward in step. Everyone watched in hushed silence at this solemnity. He passed through the red silk path guarded on both sides by the elders, the highest executives of the sect. The elders he had formed connections with over time bowed their heads and greeted him with smiles, and the heavenly demon responded with light nods. Ku. Indeed, my choice was right. Seop Chun, who had become an elder at a young age, looked at the heavenly demon with a face full of emotion. He had wanted to rise to the position of Dharma Guardian to be by his side, but as his martial prowess wasn't yet comparable to theirs, he postponed it to a later date. If it couldn't be achieved in his generation, he hoped that his descendants could stay by the cult leader's side. Thud thud. Upon reaching the altar platform, the Dharma Guardians and the head of the guard unit stopped there, and the heavenly demon walked up onto it. Watching his back as he did so, Guard Go Chan, who had been able to possess Jang Nung Ak's body again, couldn't hide his satisfied face, his nose tingling with emotion. Sniff. Who would have thought this moment would come when he was just a vengeful spirit in the heavenly demon's hands? Now he was called the right-hand man of the world's #1 person in name and reality. Could be called a human victory from a mere low-level assassin. At that moment the drum sound was heard again from the top of the inner city wall, and simultaneously, the sound of horns echoed throughout the entire city. Boom, 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 boo-boo. Someone appeared at the door of the main building. A stunningly beautiful woman walking out, wearing a beautiful ceremonial robe reminiscent of a pure white lotus. She was Chong Ryung. In her past life she was Ryu So-woo, and in this life Wai So-yun, but now that her soul and spirit had become one and complete, she called herself Chong Ryung. As she walked out solemnly, so beautiful, everyone let out exclamations in a daze. It's the Divine Lady. Truly a beauty under the moon. She slowly walked along the red silk path and climbed the stairs. The heavenly demon, who had been waiting, looked at her with a gentle smile, and she stood close by his side. The holy fire priestess approached her, handed over a torch and whispered quietly, "Divine Lady, please prepare the sacred fire." Tap. Chong Ryung nodded and took the torch. Then the holy fire priestess shouted loudly, "Great Dharma Guardian, bring forth the spirit tablet." At her cry, the great Dharma Guardian Gyeong So personally carried a pedestal with a crown and a spirit tablet inscribed with Heavenly Demon Decree up to the front of the platform. As the spirit tablet arrived, the holy fire priestess lifted it and shouted, "Now we will proceed with the founding ceremony and the cult leader's inauguration ceremony." Wah wah. All who were watching cheered. Boo boo. As the sound of horns echoed long, all who had been shouting became quiet again. Then the holy fire priestess stepped forward, raised the heavenly demon decree and said, "For the founding ceremony, there is a sacred object, this heavenly demon decree made by melting fragments of the sacred fire. Founder and first-generation cult leader Heavenly Demon, receive the heavenly demon decree. The heavenly demon stepped forward and received it with one hand. Then he climbed to the highest level of the altar platform, raised the heavenly demon decree high, which would become the sacred object symbolizing the cult leader, and shouted to everyone. The first-generation cult leader Heavenly Demon proclaims, "Here today, I declare the founding of the Heavenly Demon divine cult that will create a myth for 10,000 years." Whoosh 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 whoosh. Along with this, numerous flags rose on top of the inner city walls. The square erupted as the majestic flags of the Heavenly Demon divine cult fluttered. And that excitement soon led to tremendous cheers. Wah wah. Finally, a new martial arts organization was born. Not stopping there, the first elder O Cheonmu, sect leader of the Spiritual Sword Sanctuary, raised both hands and shouted so that everyone could hear. "Great Heavenly Demon divine cult. 1,000 years. 1,000 years. 10,000 years." Then everyone, including the other elders, followed and chanted, "Great Heavenly Demon divine cult. 1,000 years. 1,000 years. 10,000 years." The chant spread throughout the entire inner city. "Great Heavenly Demon divine cult. 1,000 years. 1,000 years. 10,000 years." Amidst everyone's cries, the Holy Fire Priestess pointed to the brazier of the Holy Fire stand, holding a torch, and said to Chong Ryong, who was waiting, "Light the fire." At this she stepped forward and lit the sacred fire stand's brazier. Whoosh. Then strangely, unlike the red flames of the torch, blue flames rose from within. Oh! The color of the flames? Everyone couldn't hide their surprise at this sight. How did such mysterious flames come about? It was because the fragments of the sacred fire spirit left after making the heavenly demon decree were used to make the holy fire stand. Tap. The Holy Fire Priestess knelt on both knees before the heavenly demon standing in front of the blue flames, crossed her arms on her chest and recited, "This body burns in the sacred fire with no attachment to life or death, eliminating evil for good and illuminating the light. Joy and sorrow all remain as mere dust." As she began to recite the scripture, everyone in the square, including the elders, followed, crossing their arms on their chests and chanting the scripture. "This body burns in the sacred fire with no attachment to life or death, eliminating evil for good and illuminating the light. Joy and sorrow all remain as mere dust." This was originally a scripture passed down from the Zoroastrian religion or Persian religion. Both the Persian religion and Zoroastrianism worshipped fire, and since the heavenly demon was the incarnation of that, this was adopted as the official scripture of the heavenly demon divine cult. Pitiable are the mortals with many worries. Pitiable are the mortals with many worries. The guests invited from outside had strange expressions at this ritual of reciting such scriptures. From the content of the scripture alone, they felt it was not a demonic path but rather one that revered righteousness. Through this, they could sense that this heavenly demon divine cult had a religious color. Amidst this, Chong Ryong's eyes sparkled. "Yes. That's the figure I've been hoping for." The dignified back of the heavenly demon standing before the crowd that filled the square. A grand master who embraces all. It seems that dream has been fulfilled through him. Boom, boom, boom. With the drum sounds, the Holy Fire Priestess, having finished reciting the scripture, stepped back, and it seemed the inauguration and founding ceremony were successfully concluding. But then, tap 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 tap. Suddenly, the head of the guard unit, Guard Go Chan, jumped onto the platform, looked at the heavenly demon and Chong Ryong with a grin, and shouted loudly. Following the inauguration and founding ceremony, the grandest event will be the wedding ceremony of the cult leader and the Divine Lady. Chong Ryong had only known about the founding ceremony. But at Go Chan's shout, as she was about to be dumbfounded, female attendants appeared as if they had been waiting, carrying a beautiful bridal gown with red and gold patterns. Ah! It closely resembled the one she was supposed to wear in her past life. She was beautiful. So beautiful, like a single red peony. Chong Ryong's eyes soon became moist. To her, the heavenly demon gently extended his hand and said, "Become my bride." A proposal in front of everyone. At this moment she had longed for since her past life. Chong Ryong's lips, which had been trembling, spread into a radiant smile. That night, the heavenly demon divine cult was bustling with festivities late into the night due to the grand events of the founding ceremony, the cult leader's inauguration and the wedding ceremony. However, the main characters of these events, cult leader Heavenly Demon and Divine Lady Chong Ryong, were nowhere to be seen. Where could they be? On a mountain peak of the 10,000 Great Mountains. The full moon hung in the center of the black night sky covered with starlight. Between pure white flowers softly glowing in the moonlight stood a beautiful man and woman. As they strolled among the flowers, the Heavenly Demon asked Chong Ryong, "Now that we're married, you should call me husband, but why do you still call me mortal?" "I don't know why." To me you'll always be mortal." At her words, the Heavenly Demon chuckled and held her hand tightly, saying, "Then I suppose I shouldn't call you wife either." Chong Ryong. To this, Chong Ryong smiled sweetly and looked up at the Heavenly Demon. Charmed by her lovable appearance, the Heavenly Demon gently embraced her back and slowly brought his lips closer. Chong Ryong softly closed her eyes and raised herself on her tiptoes, and the two shared a deep kiss under the moonlight. The bond that began on a mountain peak of the 10,000 Great Mountains thus bloomed into a shining flower there again after 100 years. Side Story 1 Part 1. Samadhi's True Flame, 1. At the bottom of a deep ravine, thick vegetation grew on the cliff above, and in the darkness where not even a ray of sunlight penetrated, footsteps echoed from somewhere. Thud, thud. The footsteps continued forward for a while before stopping somewhere. About 20 jang away from where the footsteps stopped, there stood a building illuminated by torches. The building had red cloth hanging on it, making it look like a shrine. Strangely, hundreds of tombstones were planted around it. The tombstones were densely engraved with red letters, and the way they were arranged resembled a battle formation. This alone seemed quite unusual, but around 30 diviners were guarding the shrine with utmost vigilance, forming hand seals. At that moment the door of the shrine opened and someone walked out. It was a middle-aged diviner who emerged with a serious expression on his face, as if something had happened. He looked into the darkness outside the shrine with wary eyes. Seeing his demeanor, the diviners maintaining their hand seals and guarding their positions looked at him curiously. "Moon-level diviner Yuk. What's the matter?" One of the diviners asked about the reason. The middle-aged diviner called Moon-level diviner Yuk swallowed dryly and opened his mouth. "Did no one else feel that chilling demonic energy just now?" "Demonic energy?" At this question the diviners looked at each other and tilted their heads. None of them had felt any tremendous demonic energy. Seeing the diviners' reactions, Moon-level diviner Yuk wondered if he had overreacted. But then, drip. Beads of sweat had formed on his forehead. "What's this?" It felt unusually hot. The ravine was normally quite chilly since light barely reached it, so what was going on? "Aren't you all feeling ho?" At that moment Moon-level diviner Yuk's eyes widened. For good reason. Heh. Ha. The diviners had suddenly become dazed, with unfocused eyes and drool dripping from their mouths. Sensing something ominous, Moon-level diviner Yuk hurriedly tried to form a hand seal. Clack. 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 But at that very moment, whoosh. A sound like something spinning rapidly and causing friction was heard. As he wondered what it could be, he saw two wheels blazing with crimson flames in his field of vision. Damn it, whoosh. Before he could even deploy his divination technique, a wave of devastating flames spewed from the two fiercely spinning wheels, engulfing everything around and burning it all to ashes. Soon nothing remained around the shrine but scorched traces. Footsteps continued in that place. Thud thud. The footsteps stopped again somewhere, which was right in the middle of the burnt remains of the shrine. In the center stood a large stone statue, but its form was too grotesque to be called human. This was because it had the shape of an ox with one of its horns broken off. Swish. In front of this grotesque statue, someone caressed it while muttering in a voice filled with killing intent. "Father, this body burns in the flames of purification with no attachment to life or death. Eliminating evil for the sake of good and illuminating the light, joy and sorrow all remain as mere dust. How pitiful are the worried sentient beings." A year had passed since the establishment of the Heavenly Demon Divine cult. In this year, which could be considered long or short depending on one's perspective, the doctrine of the Heavenly Demon Divine cult had spread throughout the Central Plains and was beginning to gradually influence not only martial artists but also civilians. Despite its predecessor being considered an evil organization like the Heaven and Earth Society and being rejected by the country like the Fire Faith Order, the reason it could achieve this much was largely due to the influence of the Heavenly Demon, the cult's founder and first leader. The Heavenly Demon, who had saved not only martial artists but all people from a great calamity, was revered as a hero despite treading the path of demons. As a result, even righteous martial artists were joining the Heavenly Demon divine cult in increasing numbers day by day, out of reverence for him and to pursue pure martial arts. Thanks to that, I was able to enter so easily. A young man with a neat appearance clicked his tongue as he looked at the outer wall of the inner city of the Heavenly Demon divine cult. He was able to enter easily thanks to the cult's doctrine of accepting anyone regardless of status or background, as long as they left their previous affiliations behind. It's surprisingly anticlimactic how easy it was. The reason for the young man's reaction was simple. His name was Danyak. He was a member of Silent Strides, the spy unit of the Righteous Alliance, and had been deployed to check the expanding Heavenly Demon divine cult. Just a year ago, the martial arts world had maintained a delicate balance between the three major forces: the Righteous Alliance, the Heaven and Earth Society, and the Four Evils Alliance. But now the situation had changed. The Righteous Alliance had weakened as they were being checked by the Imperial Court due to their relationship completely breaking down over incidents like the beheading of envoys, including those from the Ping family of Hebei. On the other hand, the Heavenly Demon divine cult was enjoying unprecedented power. The greatest under heaven, the Heavenly Demon. Inside that inner city was the Heavenly Demon, the leader of the Heavenly Demon divine cult, who could be considered the pinnacle of the current martial arts world. He was said to be the undisputed greatest swordsman under heaven. According to those who had participated in the legendary war between the righteous and unorthodox sects a year ago, his might was said to be enough to split heaven and earth. But Danyak had been undergoing training as a spy at that time and hadn't seen it himself. Honestly, he thought that the Heavenly Demon must have tremendous sword skills to be spoken of in such terms. However, he felt that splitting heaven and earth was too much of an exaggeration. Well, I'll find out when I see it myself. Just how strong he really was. The infiltration into the Heavenly Demon divine cult was successful. He had heard that they would receive training at a place called the Corpse Blood Valley, and be assigned positions based on their performance there. The goal was to be placed in either the cult leader's palace or the Elder Hall in the inner city. Although he was a spy, his aim was to return in triumph by making definite achievements. As they're at the height of their power, they must be at their most arrogant now. If I seize this opportunity well, I should be able to make significant achievements. Thud thud. At that moment he saw someone walking up to the platform. Danyak's eyes lit up when he saw him. He immediately recognized who it was, having memorized information about most of the important figures in the Heavenly Demon divine cult before coming. The seventh elder of the Flying Ghost clan, Huan Yixian. He had heard that in the former Heaven and Earth Society he was the leader of Shadow Clan, which handled spies and information. But suddenly Danyak felt something was strange. According to his information, the one in charge of the Corpse Blood Valley was supposed to be Li Jiom, the sixth elder of the Crimson Flame clan. So why was the leader of the Flying Ghost clan here? Ho ho. From now on, those whose names I call out should step to the left. Students, there's no need to be too surprised. It's nothing major, just a process of weeding out the rat bastards. Xing. Thing. As soon as those words ended, the warriors of the Heavenly Demon divine cult surrounding the plaza all drew their weapons at once. Seeing their actions, Danyak's expression froze. Although he had been trained to maintain his composure as much as possible, Huan Yixian's gaze was directed precisely at him. And his lips were forming the words. Yes, it's you. Danyak's face instantly turned pale. Was it he who had been arrogant, not this place? The seventh elder Huan Yixian, who had rooted out the spies, shook his head as he left the outer city's trainee grounds and headed towards the inner city. It was becoming increasingly difficult to weed out spies compared to the time of the Heaven and Earth Society. Of course, they were still catching over 90% of them, but as the scale of the cult grew, it might become harder to manage. Perhaps we should pause expanding our forces for now. They hadn't been controlling admissions due to emphasizing the cult's doctrine, but it was becoming too much. He would have to raise this issue at the next general meeting. With that thought, the seventh elder Huan Yixian entered the inner city and immediately headed towards the cult leader's palace. The reason for going to the cult leader's palace was simple. It was to check if he had returned. Where did he go this time? Since the Holy Maiden became pregnant, the cult leader had been away from the cult leader's palace more often than staying there. Because of this, reports would sometimes pile up, which was quite troublesome. As Huan Yixian entered the cult leader's palace building with a bitter taste in his mouth, he saw someone walking out, leaning on a snake-headed staff. It was the Grand Guardian Gaiongso of the 8 Poison Snake Staff. Grand Guardian Gaiong. Oh, if it isn't the 7th Elder? Swish. The two lightly bowed to each other and clasped their hands in greeting. After exchanging greetings, Huan Yixian nodded towards the cult leader's palace and said, "It seems you weren't able to have an audience again." That's right. It feels like I spend fewer days closely assisting than befits my title of Grand Guardian. Ho. You should look at it positively. In a way, the current position of Guardian is almost honorary, so you might be more comfortable physically. Gaiongso smiled at Huan Yixian's words. Who in the world could threaten the cult leader who was called the greatest under heaven? It was true. Suddenly, Grand Guardian Gaiongso's gaze turned to the scrolls in both of Huan Yixian's hands. As they expanded their influence and increased their scale, the workload was growing exponentially. On the other hand, his duty was to assist the cult leader, so when the cult leader was away, he truly had nothing to do. I'm getting to the point where I feel guilty towards the elders for being too comfortable. Oh ho. If that's the case, why don't you stay in the cult a bit longer to assist the cult leader? Grand Guardian Gaiongso gave no answer. To this, Huan Yixian spoke in a regretful tone. It seems your decision remains unchanged. I'm sorry. The cult leader has graciously cherished me, but how much longer can this old man live? I just want to return to the western region's White Pagoda Mountain and spend my remaining years with my family. Grand Guardian Gaiongso was waiting for the cult leader's approval for his retirement. Of course, Huan Yixian and several other elders were urging him to stay a bit longer to maintain the cult's strength, but it seemed he had already made up his mind firmly. Since you put it that way, there's nothing we can do. But there are still 4 years left until the personnel appointment period. Have you thought about who will succeed you? The Heavenly Demon Divine Cult conducts personnel appointments every 5 years. It was planned to be based on a thorough verification of martial prowess through martial arts competitions and past achievements. However, in cases where a position becomes vacant like this, it was decided that the predecessor would choose a successor, which would then be finalized through the Elder Council's meeting or the cult leader's approval. I was thinking of asking the Vice Guardian to succeed me. The Vice Guardian. Indeed, he is more than qualified. Vice Guardian Ma Are Hyan. In just 1 year, his abilities had greatly developed, and in terms of pure martial arts skills, he had already reached a level surpassing the Grand Guardian. Everyone assumed he would naturally become the Grand Guardian after 5 years. Come to think of it, the Vice Guardian probably doesn't know yet. Vice Guardian Ma Are Hyan is currently away. Officially, it was announced as a vacation, but in reality he knew that the Vice Guardian had left to find his father's enemy, whom he learned about from the Holy Fire Priestess. He said he would resolve it and return within 3 months, but a little over 2 months had passed. He would return to the cult before long. As Grand Guardian Gaiongso and 7th Elder Huan Yixian were engaged in casual conversation in front of the cult leader's palace. Whoosh! At that moment, crimson smoke gathered in front of them, forming a gateway. Then someone leapt out from inside. That someone was none other than Yeo Surin, the diviner from the Harmonious Immortal Pavilion. Diviner Yeo? As the two were puzzled by her sudden appearance, Yeo Surin asked them in an urgent tone. Where is the cult leader? The cult leader is currently away. What urgent matter brings you here like this? There's no time to explain. Right now. We need to find the cult leader. What could have happened to make her act like this? Through the gateway of crimson smoke she had ridden through, they could see numerous charred corpses strewn about. Side Story 1 Part 2. Samadhi's True Flame 2. Just 2 moments ago, the diviners from the Harmonious Immortal Pavilion who had gathered for a shift change were dumbfounded as they looked at the charred corpses. What on earth had happened? To find out, the senior brother tried to summon the souls from the corpses of his fellow disciples. The senior brother's expression was grim as he formed hand seals after attaching talismans. Then from one of the blackened corpses, a soul slowly emerged. The diviners recognized the soul that appeared in its living form. It's Senior Brother Jing. Senior Brother Jing. How did this happen? Kook. Be quiet. The senior brother is still performing the divination technique. As the diviners who had been clamoring at the appearance of their dead colleague fell silent, the senior brother approached Ji-yun's soul and asked, "There isn't much time to hold on to Ji-yun's soul. What exactly happened?" But then, The senior brother frowned. This was because Ji-yun's soul that had appeared was unable to speak properly with a blank expression. He looked as if he had lost his sense of self. What is this? The senior brother couldn't understand it. Even if the dead couldn't become vengeful spirits, they would inevitably retain strong attachments from their life. But Ji-yun's appearance showed not just a lack of attachment, but a complete absence of consciousness. Ji-yun, pull yourself together. You need to tell us something so we can... Swish. Eventually Ji-yun's soul dissipated and vanished. The senior brother was utterly baffled by this inexplicable and strange phenomenon. Despite his long years of training as a diviner and encountering many souls, this was the first time he had experienced something like this. If even a small trace of attachment from life remained, it would have said something, but it felt completely empty like a newborn child. At that moment someone came running towards him. It was Yeo Surin. Senior brother. How did the wooden talisman tracking technique go? To this question Yeo Surin shook her head and replied, "It's not working. The wooden talisman tracking technique, the harmonious immortal spirit trace technique. None of the 5 tracking techniques I know are working. It seems they've completely erased all traces of their techniques. It seems that way. This level of skill would be impossible without someone at least as powerful as our master." Their master was Scarlet-Tailed Old Immortal, the pavilion master of the Harmonious Immortal Pavilion, one of the 6 divine diviners known as the Pinnacle of Diviners. Without a divine diviner-level practitioner with that kind of power, it would be impossible to erase the traces of technique so cleanly. Yeo Surin looked around with devastated eyes and spoke. Who could have done this? Could it be that Three Eyes is still alive? That's impossible. Didn't we all see it back then? Everyone had witnessed that being's annihilation. Moreover, they had remained at the scene to search for any traces of Three Eyes just in case, but it no longer existed in this world. At that moment, Yeo Surin pointed towards where the shrine had been and shouted. Then who could have discovered this place, burned our fellow disciples, and taken away the statue of Great Strength King that was sealed with the killing stone? It's not a matter of who right now. We must retrieve the statue immediately. Otherwise, another great calamity will befall the Central Plains. Among the 6 demons which were called the Great Calamity among the evil spirits, Great Strength King was said to be the strongest in terms of raw power. I'll return to our pavilion to inform the master and organize a tracking team. You go to the leader of the Heavenly Demon Divine Cult immediately to report this and ask for help. Yes. What? The cult leader is away? Then where exactly is he? Well, that's... Grand Guardian Guyong Sao and 7th Elder Huan Yixian couldn't hide their embarrassment at Yeo Surin's question. They didn't know where the cult leader was either. He had a habit of disappearing without a trace, and even if they were watching him right in front of them, if he decided to move, no one could notice it. Seeing their reaction, Yeo Surin sighed and asked, "Where is Jang Nungi, the great commander of the guards, Go Chan?" Jang Nungi. He was the 2nd disciple of the deceased leader of the Heaven and Earth Society, but he had changed his name to Go Chan. Only a handful of people knew the real reason for this, and one of them was the diviner Yeo Surin. She knew that Go Chan was the cult leader's familiar. That's why she was looking for Go Chan, who could communicate with him through their connection even from afar. If she knew his location, she could instantly go to the cult leader using the magical tool given by her master. But then, this is quite unfortunate. What? The great commander of the guards, Go Chan, is also away at the moment. What? People wearing gray robes with crimson belts walked out of the outer city of the Imperial Palace. They were Taoist priests of the Zhongnan sect, affiliated with the Righteous Alliance. The 2 elderly Taoist priests walking side by side at the front with their hands behind their backs were Jian Munjia, the Grand Master of the Zhongnan sect, and his disciple Jian Haiyanjia. Behind them was a narrow-eyed young man dressed in the attire of an embroidered uniform guard. This young man's name was Jin Zhonghayan, the son of a fifth-rank lecturer at the Imperial Academy and a lay disciple of the Zhongnan sect. Although he was a lay disciple, he was being personally taught martial arts by Jian Munjia due to his innate talent. It's difficult. So difficult. As they moved away from the main gate of the outer city, Jian Munjia shook his head. The reason for his reaction was simple. It was because he had failed to achieve what he wanted. The Righteous Alliance had originally been supporting Prince Jiangjin, one of the four major power factions holding sway over the imperial court. However, the current situation was not favorable. After the incident with the Ping family of Hebei and the assassination of the envoy sent to the Righteous Alliance, their relationship with the imperial court and government had soured. Despite efforts to mend this relationship on various fronts, it had not been easy. Since Prince Jiangjin, whom they originally served, had died in an unexpected accident, they had tried to support the second prince, Prince Zhong, by sending Jin Zhonghayan to his side. However, the situation worsened further when the ailing emperor passed away and the young crown prince ascended to the throne. Master, are you troubled because of what Prince Zhong said? It's problematic. Prince Zhong had not given up yet. He was gathering troops and wanted the Righteous Alliance to help with this. However, Jian Munjia and other executives of the Righteous Alliance were not very keen on this idea. What Prince Zhong was aiming for was literally treason. The chances are low. It might have been possible in the past, but now it was difficult. The crown prince was the son of the imperial consort Xiao, and behind them was the heavenly demon divine cult. Of course, when the crown prince ascended to the throne, she too had been secretly contacting the Righteous Alliance to try and break free from their influence. But this was nothing more than a precarious balancing act. The heavenly demon. Jian Munjia still couldn't forget the sight from the Great War between the righteous and unorthodox sects. A single sword strike that split heaven and earth. With just that, he had proven his martial prowess, which could be said to be unparalleled not just in the current martial arts world but throughout history. Those who hadn't seen it considered this story an exaggeration. But the heavenly demon had become an indelible presence in the minds of all martial artists who participated in the war. Hugh. Let's put this conversation aside for now. By the way, I heard that Zhu Wenxiang, a disciple of the Kongtong sect, became a new 6 offices commander after just a year. Yes. Jin Zhonghayan's expression soured at Jian Munjia's words. This was because he too had made every effort to become a 6 offices commander, but had ultimately been outmatched in both skill and influence. In just a year, using who knows what methods, that guy had even gained the backing of Minister Hang Yunpa, who held the positions of Grand Preceptor among the 3 excellencies and Commander-in-Chief of the central government, reaching even greater heights. The speed at which he was gaining power was frightening, and when he tried to probe his true intentions, something seemed off. It didn't seem like he actually wanted power. No. That's too disrespectful. How could someone receiving an official salary even imagine such a thing? This was nothing short of absurd. At that moment, Jian Munjia patted his back as if to comfort him and said, "There's no need to be hasty. If you steadfastly follow the path you want to take, you will surely reach your desired destination. I'll keep that in mind. Anyway, since we've met after a long time, shouldn't we see your senior brothers and fellow disciples?" "Yes. As it happens, I've heard of a restaurant called Weiyingjing nearby, famous for its duck dishes. I've made a reservation, so let's relax and catch up." Understood. Early evening at the Weiyingjing restaurant. A handsome man and a beautiful woman were enjoying their meal at the best spot in the restaurant with the finest view. However, the waiters watching them were fidgeting nervously. Then a middle-aged man who seemed to be in a higher position among the staff walked briskly over, noticed this and scolded them. "Didn't I tell you not to accept any customers after the hour of 5 to 7 p.m.? How are those people eating there?" "We don't know either, sir." "What do you mean you don't know? Are you saying they snuck in?" "We're not sure. They seem to have ordered and are eating, but no one remembers taking their order." This was the reason for their bewilderment. No one had taken their order. Yet the kitchen had already prepared and sent out the food based on an order, and those customers were just starting their meal. The middle-aged man thumped his chest in frustration at their response and then said, "Go apologize immediately and offer to pack their food to go." "We were about to do that, but..." How frustrating. "I'll go myself." You all quickly prepare to receive the distinguished guests who have made a reservation. Why yes, sir. After sending the waiters away, the senior staff member approached the couple who were dining. Unlike his attitude towards the waiters, he carefully put on a smiling face and began to speak. I apologize, customers. Today But at that moment, a heavy pouch fell in front of him. Wondering what this could be, he picked it up and found it filled with silver coins, easily numbering in the hundreds. Seeing this, the middle-aged man unconsciously swallowed hard. This amount was enough to rent out the entire place for about a week. As he was momentarily at a loss for words due to the excessive amount of money, the young man who had given it to him spoke. My wife says she likes the smoked salt-grilled duck, so bring out more. At these words, the stunningly beautiful woman sitting next to him, gently caressing her slightly protruding belly, interjected. It's not me but our little one in my belly who wants to eat it. Ah, right. It's our little one who wants it. Did you hear? Bring more salt-grilled duck. The middle-aged man was at a loss for words at this exchange. He had been shocked into silence by the large sum of money, but they had already accepted a reservation fee from the Zhongnan sect Taoists. Although they were Taoists, they were essentially martial artists, and it was unpredictable what might happen if their mood was soured. Just then, snap. The young man snapped his fingers at him. Then, you want smoked salt-grilled duck? But didn't you say the Zhongnan sect Taoists are coming soon? Is it okay to leave those customers there? Suddenly, the head chef from the kitchen appeared in front of him. As he was wondering what was going on, he realized he was standing in front of the kitchen. It was enough to make ghosts wail in confusion. As the middle-aged man, flustered by this situation, hurriedly tried to run back to the couple. Rumble. At that moment, a group of Taoists wearing gray robes entered through the entrance. The middle-aged man's expression hardened when he saw this. We're doomed. The situation he had been worried about had come to pass. As he was struggling with how to explain this, he saw the Zhongnan sect Taoists discover the dining couple and frown. Chapter 497.3 East Side Story 1 Part 3. Samadhi's True Flame 3. The gray-robed Zhongnan sect Taoists entered the Weiyingjing, a restaurant specializing in duck dishes. Befitting their status as members of a major sect, they walked in with dignity. However, they couldn't help but frown when they saw the couple sitting at the spot with the best view in the restaurant. Sun Moon, the most senior disciple among the Taoist priests of the Sun lineage, asked with puzzlement. Didn't we make a reservation? To this, his direct disciple Sun Yun replied. Yes. We made a reservation 2 days ago, anticipating important government-related discussions. Then who are those people? There seems to have been some mistake. I'll ask the restaurant staff first. Please do so. Yes. Taoist Sun Yun approached the middle-aged man who appeared to be the senior staff member of Weiyingjing. The middle-aged man was already flustered about having to ask the couple to leave, and now he was even more bewildered after taking an order he didn't remember receiving. Hello, sir. Taoist priest. I am the Taoist Sun Yun who made the reservation 2 days ago. How could I forget? At that time I clearly said we would rent out the entire restaurant, but it seems you've seated other customers. May I ask what happened? That's. The middle-aged man was at a loss for words. He too was unsure how to answer this question. Seeing his demeanor, Taoist Sun Yun politely said. It seems there has been some misunderstanding. Could you please ask those customers to vacate their seats? A polite request, unlike the fear he had initially felt. While feeling slightly relieved, the senior staff member couldn't let his guard down at all. Regardless of whether they were from righteous or unorthodox sects, martial artists were known to resort to violence if things didn't go their way. When that happened, the restaurant would always end up in ruins. Especially since it had been over a year ago, but due to a conflict between the imperial court and martial artists, too many people had died inside the restaurant, forcing them to relocate to a new place. Please wait a moment. Thinking that he should send them away somehow to avoid trouble, even though Taoists were unlikely to kill people, the senior staff member grabbed the money pouch and ran to the couple. Excuse me, customers. Is the food ready already? Well, that's not it. Actually, we have customers who reserved the entire restaurant from the hour of you today, so we weren't supposed to accept any other customers. There seems to have been a misunderstanding. My wife remembered coming here before and said she wanted to eat duck. Customer, I sincerely appreciate that, but we paid extra for a quiet meal. Is it not enough? That's. The senior staff member, who had been stomping his feet in frustration, seemed to decide it was no use and revealed his true thoughts. Customer, the guests who reserved today are Taoist priests from a major sect. Have you heard of martial artists? They've rented out the entire restaurant, and if you don't vacate your seats, I don't know what kind of trouble might occur. The senior staff member was practically begging. At this, the young man who had been about to pick up a piece of duck meat with his chopsticks turned his gaze to glance at the Zhongnan sect Taoists. Although they hadn't shown it much yet, their expressions weren't very pleased. Trouble, you say? Please, customer, I beg you. There's nothing good that can come from getting into a dispute with martial artists. Fortunately, these gentlemen are Taoist priests from a righteous sect, and they've asked me to request your understanding. We'll pack up all the prepared food for you, so please help us out, if not for me then for the restaurant. As the staff member pleaded, even clasping his hands together, the woman finally spoke up. Dear, it seems the staff member is in a difficult position. Let's just have them pack up the smoked salt-grilled duck that's coming out and go. At her words, the young man, who had been giving a strange look, shrugged with a smile and nodded in agreement. Pack it up for us. We'll wait. Oh, thank you so much. The senior staff member was relieved that the issue was resolved without the customers being stubborn as he had worried. After calling over a waiter and instructing him to have the kitchen pack up the ordered food, the senior staff member hurriedly ran to the Zhongnan sect Taoists and said, there was a slight misunderstanding and we had seated some customers, but they'll be leaving soon, so don't worry. First, let me prepare other seats for you. Sir. At that moment, Taoist Sun Yun interrupted the senior staff member. Then, nodding towards the couple who were still eating the dishes on the table while their food was being packed, he said, I asked you to request their understanding and have them vacate their seats immediately, but it seems they are continuing to eat. Is that not so? Taoist priest, they will soon. It seems I'll have to ask for their understanding myself. The elders of our sect will be arriving soon, and we don't have the luxury of waiting for them to finish packing their food. See, customer. It won't take long. The senior staff member tried to stop him hurriedly but soon had to close his mouth. This was because the moment he made eye contact with Taoist Sun Yun, he was intimidated by the unique aura of martial artists and became frightened. Passing by the frozen senior staff member, Taoist Sun Yun approached the couple dining at the spot with the best view. Ha! Seeing this, Sun Moon, the senior disciple of the Sun lineage, shook his head. Although they were Taoists, their personalities were naturally diverse. His disciple Sun Yun had a gentle appearance but was quick-tempered and quite hot-blooded, always taking the lead in such situations. My disciple is going to pick on some innocent person again. No, there won't even be a need to pick on anyone. With just a little pressure they would naturally. Wait a moment. Ah. Sun Moon suddenly realized his mistake. In the excitement of coming to Kaifeng, he had forgotten that this was the imperial capital. Unlike usual, there might be many children of powerful families in Kaifeng, the imperial capital. If they tried to forcibly evict someone just because they had made a reservation without checking anything, it could lead to quite a bit of trouble. So Sun Moon hurriedly tried to call Sun Yun back. But at that moment, swish, Sun Yun was already returning. With a somewhat dazed look, he said to his senior disciple Sun Moon, on second thought, I think it's better to wait for a while. Sun Moon furrowed his brow. He had been about to stop him, but he knew Sun Yun's personality better than anyone. It was highly unlikely for the hot-tempered Sun Yun to voluntarily back down before being scolded. Puzzled by this, Sun Moon, with a disbelieving heart, He clapped his hands strongly in front of Sun Yun. Then, senior brother? Ha! Life returned to Sun Yun's eyes, and he stared blankly with a confused expression before saying, How did I come back in front of you, senior brother? That's what I'd like to know. Didn't you just go to those customers and come right back? Me? I haven't even spoken to them yet. At these words from his disciple Sun Yun, Sun Moon's eyes filled with wariness as he reached for the sword at his back and shouted, What kind of sorcery have you used? Murmur, murmur. At his sudden outcry, the other Zhongnan sect Taoists instinctively reached for their weapons, ready to draw their swords at any moment. Sorcery? What are you talking about? Xing. As they looked on in confusion, Sun Moon widened his stance and partially drew his sword, shouting again, What have you done to my disciple? Speak up now. Sun Moon was well versed in battles against unorthodox sect members. Therefore he thought this might be one of those unexpected sorceries that some of them used. However, despite his shouting, the two people showed little reaction. Instead, they were calmly eating their food and conversing. What a coincidence. On the day our little one wants to eat duck, we run into these Taoists. Indeed. It's not good for prenatal education. Can you make it less noisy? There's nothing to be noisy about. This is where Chong Ryong and our child are eating. We should keep it quiet. Their nonchalant attitude gave Sun Moon a strange feeling. Clearly, in terms of his martial sense, they seemed to be just ordinary people. He couldn't feel any energy from them at all, so how could they remain so calm? Could they be masters who had completely concealed their inner energy? Feeling wary, Sun Moon finally drew his sword and ordered the Zhongnan sect Taoists. Draw your swords. Form a sword formation. Before he could finish his words. This is a place for my wife. If you quietly leave so we can eat, I'll let this pass. The young man warned as he poured wine into a cup. The Zhongnan sect Taoists' expressions turned ugly, angered by his condescending tone, as if addressing inferiors. The one who couldn't contain his anger the most was Sun Yun, who had just fallen victim to that strange technique. You unorthodox sect scum, how dare you talk about letting us pass? Sun Yun drew his sword and lunged towards the young man. He was about to unleash the opening move of the Zhongnan sect's 13 glorious sword techniques, to subdue him in one go. But then clack. At that moment, Sun Yun's eyes widened in shock. This was because the young man had caught the blade of his sword with chopsticks as he was about to execute his sword technique. What is this? I told you not to disturb our meal. Clang. As soon as those words were spoken, the blade held by the chopsticks snapped in two. Breaking a sword with wooden chopsticks? Stunned by this near-miraculous technique, Sun Yun hurriedly tried to retreat using his footwork. However, at that moment, one of the chopsticks from the table flew out on its own and struck an acupoint on the back of Sun Yun's head. Thud. Kook. Sun Yun, his acupoint struck, collapsed to the floor, seemingly unconscious. Thump. As he fell, the shocked Zhongnan sect Taoists all tried to draw their swords at once. But none of them could draw their swords. It was as if the swords were stuck to their scabbards, refusing to come out. A senior brother, the sword. The sword won't come out. What do you mean the sword won't come out? What nonsense are you saying? It's true. None of the 30 or so Taoists could draw their swords. Faced with this incredibly strange situation, Senior Sun Moon finally seemed to realize something was terribly wrong and didn't know what to do. Just then, a voice was heard from the entrance behind him. What is all this commotion about? Grandmaster Jian Munjia. The Zhongnan sect Taoists' faces lit up at the appearance of Jian Munjia, their highest-ranking master and elder. Moreover, Jian Haiyanjia, a supreme expert no less formidable than him, and Jin Zhonghaiyan, called the greatest genius among the Zhongnan sect's lay disciples, had also arrived. Sun Moon hurriedly tried to ask Jian Munjia for help. Grandmaster. Suddenly, Sun Moon was at a loss for words. This was because Jian Munjia, known as the highest master of their sect, was looking at the young man instead of them, unable to hide his bewildered expression. It was clearly close to fear. Why is the Grandmaster reacting like this? What on earth have you lot done? Pardon. What's going on? Then shocking words flowed from Jian Munjia's mouth. Do you want to erase Zhongnan from this world? What? Grandmaster, what do you mean? Slap. Before he could finish speaking, Jian Munjia slapped Sun Moon so hard that his body staggered, then hurriedly knelt on one knee and clasped his hands in respect towards the young man who was pouring wine. All the Zhongnan sect Taoists of the Sun lineage were dumbfounded by this sight. How could the Grandmaster be showing such behavior? Then, Jian Munjia of Zhongnan pays his respects to the heavenly demon cult leader, the greatest under heaven.